I've been on 10 milligrams of ritalin for about 2 weeks now for the treatment of inattentive ADHD, and 10 milligrams of trintelllix for about a month and a half for the treatment of depression and anxiety. I'm officially back in school. The semester officially started today. This is the first semester of my senior year at the university. So it's getting harder to find the time to make these videos, but I'm gonna try to keep at it. So last week I actually had a job interview. I applied for a part-time job position as a reading specialist, and I got called back for a job interview. And the night before the interview, I realized that I had forgotten to take the Ritalin in the morning. And so typically when I forget to take my antidepressant in the morning, I'll just take it at night. But of course, since I'm kind of a newbie when it comes to taking stimulants, and it kind of slipped my mind for a second that it was a stimulant, I went ahead and I took Ritalin at like 8 o'clock at night. And that was like the worst mistake that I could have possibly made, because that was the night before my interview. And as we all know, Ritalin is a stimulant, so I could not sleep at all. I didn't get any sleep that night. I was up with sweaty palms and palpitations, and I could feel my accelerated heartbeat. And I was just laying there, tossing and turning, unable to sleep, scrolling through social media the night before my interview. And to make things worse, my interview was at like 10 in the morning, so it's not like I could have gotten any sleep the following day anyway. So I was already freaking out enough about the job interview, because I do have major social anxiety, and a job interview is like one of the worst situations that you could possibly put me in. And I'm 31 years old, and this has only ever been my second job interview that I've ever had, because I've always worked from home. For over 10 years, I ran an Etsy shop online where I sold custom invitations, t-shirt, custom mugs, and digital files, because I'm also a graphic designer. And I still run a business from home selling custom t-shirts and all that. But I did want to get some actual real job experience. And my very first interview I had when I was 19, and I completely blew it. I was terrified. I was frozen because of how nervous I was. The interviewer even asked me if I was okay. That's how terrified I was. And I never again went in for a job interview after that. So now, 11 years later, actually 12 years later, this is my second ever job interview for a reading specialist position for a company called Pride. So they specialize in reading intervention for students who have learning differences or learning disabilities like ADD, dyslexia. And I felt like it was right in my area of interest, because I am currently at university studying communication sciences and disorders, and my goal ultimately is to become a speech therapist or a speech language pathologist. Now, in order to do that, I do have to go to graduate school, and I have to get a master's degree. So I have to be applying, I'll be applying to grad school soon, and I don't have very much experience other than I've been a volunteer tutor for a company called School on Wheels for about 2 years. And so I thought this reading specialist position would really help me kind of start working with kids with special needs. And to be honest, I was not expecting to get an interview. I just submitted my resume like I did to a couple of different places, and I got a call back, set up an interview. And like I said, the night before, I didn't get any sleep because I decided to take the Ritalin at night. So I went through the interview, and the interviewer kind of caught me off guard, because she started off by asking me, she said, I'm going to show up some cards with letters, kind of like little flashcards with letters, and I want you to tell me the letter name and the sound that it makes. And then she said, I want you to name 5 consonants and the sounds that they make, and then 5 vowels and the sound, short vowel sound and the long vowel sound that they make. So I was really not expecting to be put on the spot with all that kind of knowledge, because I knew it was for a reading specialist position. I just didn't know that I was going to be quizzed and all of these things. But I think I did relatively well. I was nervous, and I think that was probably visible. But I wasn't as nervous as I could have been, because the interview was actually online through a conference call through Zoom. So I was in my office the entire time, in my home office, which is my comfort zone. So I think that had the interview been in person, I probably would have been a lot more nervous. Um, and if you know anything about anxiety, and particularly social anxiety, you know that being put on the spot is like one of the worst things. So I was definitely put on the spot, which definitely um, amped up my anxiety quite a bit. But I tried to kind of internally calm myself down and tell myself that I was doing okay, and to just keep going with the interview. Even though I might have been visibly nervous, I did my best to continue kind of answering questions. And one thing that really helped me is to kind of think of the interview as more of a conversation, and not so much of like someone that's in position of power interviewing you and that you're being evaluated. I kind of tried to think of it as a conversation just between two normal people. Um, and um, and that was super, sorry, ADHD just kind of distracting me with, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, that was helpful to think of the interview in that way. And then I kind of found moments where I could relate to the interviewer, where I don't even know how it was brought up, but she talked about something about her kids, about her daughter going to school for psychology. And I told her that, psychology is my minor and that it's a very interesting subject, but that my major is communication sciences and disorders. And I also told her that I also have a son. Um, because she said, "Oh, I read on here that you have a baby," and I said, "Well, he's not a baby anymore. He's 7, but he'll always be my baby." And she kind of laughed and said, "Yeah, all my kids are off to college and grown, but they'll always be my baby too." So I know it's not always possible, but kind of finding ways to connect with the interviewer in kind of just like a very down to earth way, because we're all people. And I know sometimes with social anxiety, it can seem like we're being judged all the time. Um, but I just kind of try to remind myself, okay, she's just a person, doing her job. This is just kind of like a conversation. Just do your best. So I'm not saying that completely alleviated the anxiety. I'm just saying that it helped. But I answered most of the questions pretty accurately. And then for the last question, she said, if your best friend had to describe you using 3 adjectives, what would she say? And that was kind of a surprise question, too. And I just said that I was creative, patient, and I can't remember the last adjective, like empathetic. I don't even know if that's an actual word. I don't know if it's empathic or empathetic, but I tend to empathize with people a lot. And then she asked me why I wanted to work with them, and I just talked a little bit about my background, the fact that I have cerebral palsy, ADHD, and that I grew up around IEPs, especially special education. I went to adapted PE, I went to speech therapy, I had a really hard time with math, and then I found that once I was able to find the right tutor, it really made all the difference. And then I guess I must have made a good impression, because she, that same day, she offered me the job. And it's only a part-time job because I'm currently going to school full-time, and I do have to keep up my grades, so I don't want to take on too much. I'm also a mom to a 7-year-old boy, and I want to have time to spend with him. So anyway, she emailed me and offered me a it's a reading specialist position, but really what it is, it's like an in-home tutor position, and I have to follow the guidelines of a special tutoring method that they use called. I went through the training for that tutoring method and exactly what I have to do. So I did that, and I did like fingerprinting, background check, all of these steps, and then they'll be mailing me my tutoring kit soon, and I'll be having my first in-home tutoring session with my student next week. So kind of nervous, excited, but kind of nervous to get started with that, especially because I do have anxiety, but I guess we'll see how that goes. So anyway, as far as the medication, do not take the stimulant at night. At least for me, it was not a good idea. I do find that it helps me stay focused, kind of stay on task more. But some days I just get sleepy and really tired out of nowhere, and I don't know if that's the trintelllix that I'm taking, because I'm taking trintelllix as well as a stimulant. So I wonder if maybe they don't work too well, or they don't work very well together. The thing about taking two medications at once is that it's difficult to tell which is the stimulant acting and what is the antidepressant, and whether those two medications work well with each other. I mean, my psychiatrist said that they did, and she probably knows what she's talking about. I don't think that she would give me two medications that would like cancel out the effects of the other. I definitely do notice if I'm sitting still and I've just taken the stimulant, I could tell my heartbeat is accelerated quite a bit. And I think that's kind of one of the side effects of taking a stimulant. And then I think this is the long acting, because I only have to take it once, and I take it in the morning. And after about 6 to 8 hours, I start feeling tired. So the trintelllix still does make me feel a little bit nauseous when I'm taking it. And since I've stopped taking the Strattera about 2 weeks ago, my appetite has pretty much returned to normal. So I did mention in a previous video that Strattera was suppressing my appetite. That is no longer the case, since that I'm no longer taking Strattera. I do get hungry throughout the day. So that's another thing. And that's pretty much the only update that I have. For now, I will be back soon.